Hello and welcome to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. My guest today is Nicole BZ, and Nicole and I were introduced by the magnificent Carolyn Herford. So I just want to give a shout out to her and say welcome to the podcast, Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm truly honored to be here because fuck fine.
That's right. That's what we say around here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have a lot of notes from our original conversation, and I am super eager about getting into hearing your story, sharing your story with all the listeners. And let's start out with, what were the beliefs and values that were instilled in you as you were growing up that perhaps contributed to some of the decisions and paths that you took as you grew up?
Fantastic question. I have first generation, and so I was very much taught to work and work hard. I was also taught that, they can take everything, but they can't take what's up in here. And I'm pointing at my brain hole for everybody who
Mm-hmm.
can't see. So, essentially what you learn, what you know, and what you do is who you are. And I have carried that with me. I am actually a survivor. I had cancer when I was younger. So that just compounded that work ethic, that take life. You are in control of your own experience. You create your own reality. And the fastest way to change anything is to change your perspective. And then you just put one foot in front of the other and you keep going. The only way you fail is if you quit.
Were you taught that that's what failure meant? Was the only way to fail is to quit? Or was there a different
No, there was
definition?
lots of definitions. So, my parents have a fairly narrow view of what success is, and I think for most of us, it looks like a mortgage and two kids, half a dog, and a career that you spend 40 years in, with a 401k plan that will carry you after those. That was the definition of success. So, I have
Okay.
very much carved out a very different definition for myself and a path that I walk.
Yeah. So then what? So many questions. Okay. So because I know a little bit about your path. So share a little
hmm
bit about where you went first on your career path. And then I'm also curious to know how that went over in your family, given what you just said.
Thank you. So I'll try and keep it brief because it's been a long and winding road. So I started working really young. I got my first job at 14. I worked full time while I was in college, and I mean, I didn't even go to graduation. I went to work. That, and I keep going back to this fine idea because that's where you and I connected. Everything was fine. I had a leadership position in an amazing organization. I was, earning $50,000 a year before I even graduated from college. I was on the quote unquote right path,
Mm-hmm.
but it just wasn't doing it for me. And so I took a giant leap of faith. Because I had worked so much, I never got like that year abroad experience, and traveling is something really close to me. So again, long story short, I ended up in Australia, um, following my heart, following my passion, which was music. As much as I love the creative arts, my strength has always been in business. So despite the positions that I put myself in, I always ended up managing the space. And so I just kind of went with that and started my first business at 23, started several more to my family's disdain. And the good news is in my perseverance, I've demonstrated to them that I'm okay and they don't
Mm-hmm.
have to worry about me. But does that mean they're on board or they understand? No. And that's the thing, that's okay. I mean, one of the things that happens when you're a trailblazer, when you create your own definition of success, when you say, fuck you, fine, you are confident in who you are and how you're showing up and what you're doing. And it's okay if other people don't get that. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think I answered your question. But
Yeah.
just to kind of wrap it up and where I'm at now. So ironically, yeah. My mom got sick, and so I left Australia and moved back to the States, burned it all down, had to start completely over. Ended up in business again, and working in music, which I never thought was going to happen. But when you take those crazy leaps of faith, amazing things tend to happen. So I now have a business where I have the flexibility. I'm able to go back and forth and support my mom. I actually just got back yesterday, and I'm able to work from anywhere, and I'm still trailblazing and still confusing the hell out of my parents. So some things never change.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have two younger brothers.
Did they follow a more traditional path? I'm just
My
curious.
youngest, absolutely. The middle child, he gets a lot of support from my parents for a variety of different reasons. So we're all doing completely different things, but
Okay.
yeah, the my youngest brother is carrying the torch. So hopefully he has some grandbabies for my parents soon.
Right. Right. But you're the oldest. So that also
I
makes,
am.
yeah. And so am I. It makes us like we have to clear the trail for the ones behind us.
Oh yeah,
Just,
he's good about it, admitting that I made things a hell of a lot easier for him. But I may have broken a few souls in that process.
again, that's more about them than you. So
Yeah,
yeah.
true, true.
Right. Right. Um, yeah. So we had talked, so you spent 18 years in the music industry.
I did. Yeah, I mean, like I think I started around 19 and I officially retired at 38. So, yeah, it was a wild ride.
What was it that made you decide to leave that industry? Because
Really
it's
good
not, I mean, like
question.
people, again, people look at it from the outside and they're like, oh my God, that sounds so romantic, not romantic. What, like, just like, it just
Oh,
sounds
it was
cool.
amazing. And the my last stint, my last couple of years were dreams that I didn't know were possible. I was working with one of my best friends, with an artist who gets to do all of the things that you dream about artists getting to do, headlining all of the festivals that you've heard of, making, six-figure checks and a gig and traveling around the world and A-list. And it was a dream. It was a dream. I had always said since I got started that I was not planning on being a lifer, which is how they refer to it, and at least in the music industry. I would assume it happens in other industries as well. And I mean, even 20 years is a pretty good run.
Mm-hmm.
And so at 20, I was like, not past 25. And at 25, I was like, not past 30, and so on and so forth. And I don't know if I kind of set myself up for a phoenix rising from the ashes moment with those limitations, but my intention had never been to spend the rest of my life in artist management. And it was one of those things that happened where I would see a problem and I'd solve it. And then I built a business around it. And then I'd see a
Mm-hmm.
problem and solve it and then built a business around it. And so I started making little mistakes. Just annoying, a typo here, an incorrect date on a Facebook post there. And I mean, it feels trivial, but when a million people are looking at that Facebook post as the
Mm-hmm.
announce for the next date, it is a big deal. And the more I tried to overcorrect, the more frequent these mistakes were. And it was one of those, my friend and I were like, what's going on here? And she, thankfully, and don't get me wrong, this was probably one of the hardest conversations I've ever had, but she said, I don't think you want this anymore. I don't think this isn't where we started. This wasn't, where you're setting up the gig and you're touring and you're managing, like you're tour managing and you're with the band and you're lumping it and you're the one collecting the money at the end of the night. This is like, you have a driver that picks you up and drops you off 30 minutes before the show, and everybody like walks out onto stage, and then like afterwards you can figure out if so it was just
Mm-hmm.
a very different thing than what I had originally signed up for. And for most people, like that's where they wanted to be. But for me, based on my behavior and how I was showing up in my day to day, it was very clear it's not where I wanted to be. And so to hear that reflected back at me, again, lots of tears.
Mm-hmm.
But she was incredible, and we were able to have like a very amicable and separation that took a couple of months to figure out, and it gave me the opportunity to really figure out where to from here. So yeah, and it's been my key indicator of burnout, because my inclination is to work too much and overschedule. I love what I do. I'm so lucky that I get to do what I'm passionate about. It's still work. And so
Right.
when I start to double book my calendar, when I start to forget things that I think needed to get done that, fall under a certain threshold, I realize that I'm probably overdoing it. I need to take a step back. Or I just really need to check and make sure that this still feels good. This is still where I want to be and make changes accordingly.
Yeah, so checking in with yourself. So what was it that what were some of the tools maybe that you used, or the things that you did to help you in that transition period figure out, okay, I don't want to do this anymore, but what is it that I do want to do?
This is not a shameless plug. This is real talk. I hired a coach. So one of the things that I did do was a yoga teacher training. Yoga had always been like my mental health. Once, I did the therapy and medication, and as I kind of was able to create healthier habits in my day-to-day life, I was able to step away from some of those other modalities of healing. And
Mm-hmm.
yoga has been and will always be a huge part of that for me. At my yoga studio, we were doing sort of like a, make your year awesome, or some type of workshop. And I met another coach, and uh, I wasn't a coach yet. She talked about her life and her lifestyle, and I said, that sounds familiar. I don't know who I am if I'm not a band manager,
Mm-hmm.
but I do know, like, I need a computer and I need flexibility, and especially with traveling to be with my mom as well. I have to create a life that at least ticks those boxes. She just so happened to be a career coach, and I thought, okay, I'm making a major career transition. I'm going to get some help with this. That was, uh, I mean, I still work with this woman. I am now a coach. I ended up studying at the same place where she studied. And that taught me not only, I mean, it didn't just give me the space to figure out what next, but it taught me how to iterate on that repeatedly, and how to check myself when I am getting into those spaces of burnout, or where I am letting fear make decisions for me, and what fine feels like. Because fine can be a useful barometer, especially for someone like me who moves very, very quickly and takes really, really big risks. Like, is this fine? Is a healthy question sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But fine as a be all and end all, or a place where I can stay, it doesn't work for me. So I've just got so many more tools in my belt now as a result of asking for that help, getting that support, and then applying that support as I've moved forward and created more expansion and growth.
Yeah, but really yoga was kind of the catalyst for you that
Well,
even
I mean, if
introduced you to this coach.
yeah, I signed up because I'd literally been traveling and on the road for like over 10 years. So I signed up for the teacher training so that I couldn't leave. Like, I had, like, it
You
was it
had an
was a
excuse.
6-month program. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it was a 6-month program, and it was every weekend, and you couldn't miss one.
Yeah.
So that's actually why. And I'm one of those people that, I was in a yoga class, I think, just contemplating like the mistakes I had been making and my own happiness, and like I was existing in this space of fine, but aware that I was just existing. And then
Mm-hmm.
they announced a yoga teacher training, and then I looked into it, and then I had this conversation with my partner, and I was like, okay, well, this will anchor me. This will give me the space. I now have a 6-month runway here until I take off again. And so, yeah, it was a combination of things.
It sounds like you took inspired action though.
100%.
That's one of the key things, is not just doing something to do something, but you listened and followed the breadcrumbs, if you will, that to an inspired action that led you to the next thing.
Yeah, and oftentimes the next thing didn't, like, there was a breadcrumb. So I
Mm-hmm.
definitely got distracted in yoga teacher training and was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to be a yoga teacher." And I stepped that out, and then I thought, I realized fairly quickly, I don't love this. And then it's like, well, is it just because you're not good at it, or is it just because this is something new? And it's like, no. I mean, really, I did this to deepen my practice and to
Mm-hmm.
then enable myself to be able to practice anywhere, anytime. I didn't need a class or a studio. That's freedom for me.
Right.
But I definitely, it is like, I started walking down a path, and I was like, oh no, this wasn't where I thought this inspired action would lead me, and or it doesn't feel the way that I thought it would feel. So I'm going to take a few steps back and then step out something else. And that's how I ended up back in Colorado, which is another long story. But that I was here and I had a moment on the side of a mountain and I thought, this is where I want to be. And I don't have a plan. And I don't have anything other than this feeling and this inspiration of
Hmm.
this is what my next step is. And then that led to, a whole bunch of different opportunities that I stepped out and then realized, so it was a lot of trial. I don't want to say trial and error, but trying things, really stepping into, is this where I want to be? How good does this feel? Is this fine or is this fabulous?
How good does this feel? That is
Yeah.
such a great way to look at it, and to a question to ask yourself as you're doing it. And the other thing you mentioned, and is something that we've talked about in previous episodes and it keeps coming up, is you don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take
No.
one step, follow
Yeah.
that one breadcrumb. If that's all you can see, then do that thing. And then the next thing will be opened up to you as you go. But you're
Hmm.
not going to see the next thing until you take that first step, follow that first breadcrumb.
Yep.
And
Well, because if you're trying to do something completely new that you've never done before, and for a lot of the people that I work with, no one's ever done before,
mm-hmm,
there isn't a map. There isn't a trail of breadcrumbs. There isn't a blueprint. There's one step forward. And then
right,
from there, you get to see the next step, but you're not going to know the how and the when. And
right.
it's your brain's going to tell you no, but your heart's going to be like, yes. And so
Yeah,
the more you can just tune into that compass and that guide of, no, this feels good, take another step.
right.
Then,
This
yeah.
feels good. And as you also mentioned, if it's not leading you where you thought it was going to go, or it doesn't feel good as you continue, you can make a different decision.
Hmm.
Nothing is permanent here.
Nope. Well,
Yeah,
in 2020 hindsight, when you look back, you've made it all work. That's why
right,
you're standing here right now, ready to take another step. So chances are you're gonna make this work too.
right.
And yeah, you're either gonna win or learn. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, going back to when we were talking at the beginning about what's the definition of failure. That's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Just
where
standing still, going, giving up.
giving up. Yes. Yeah, we haven't used that one as the definition, but I agree. Giving up. Yeah. Okay. Um we're going to edit this part out, but
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
just
No, I'm
I'm
not
just
worried. Don't you
thinking
worry.
I'm just thinking
I
of
have those in my
what
own,
do
like, because I do my own editing, and I'm like, okay, pause. You're thinking, dot, dot, dot. Okay, okay, go.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I want to ask you about how one of the things that we talked about in the previous conversation was the need to define for yourself what using your values as a filter.
Mm, yeah.
So when we talked before this interview, we were talking a little bit about defining defining for yourself what your values are, and then using those as a filter to help you make decisions on how to go forward. Since we're talking
Right.
about making decisions, how have you used that, or how do you advise people to use to tap into that as a tool?
Love it. So in that, like, you don't know how, you don't know when, you just got to take one step forward. When you use your values as a filter, that step is going to be a positive, expansive step. So for me, it's fun, excellence, adventure, and authenticity. Now,
Those
if
are
I
your
can tick those,
values.
those are my values. And so if I can tick those four boxes off, I'm saying yes. There have been a lot of things that if I hadn't put it through that filter, I use the example of working with my accountants because
Okay.
it is a tenuous relationship. Mainly, I have four different businesses, and so just me getting my books, it took us a couple of years just for the bookkeeping and their systems and my systems to align. And then, there's deadlines, there's expectations. And when I was having kind of a temper tantrum, because I think that, and this was before everything that's been going on, we were pushing May and my taxes hadn't been filed. And I thought, I'm going to fire these guys. And I went through my value filter because everybody knows, like, getting a new, firstly, you want to I like loyalty, I like relationships, and I thought, okay, this is feels like a knee-jerk reaction because I'm pissed off right now. I don't like making decisions when I have a lot of energy around them. So let's use your values as a filter here. And is it fun? No. But like, is working with your accountants fun? I don't know. Is it adventurous? Yeah. I mean, they're teaching me a hell of a lot. They have such a large base of clients that they have a very strenuous system that they put you through. And yeah, I'm learning something new every day. That's my definition of an adventure. Is it authentic? I'm expressing my needs, they're expressing their needs. I have a lot of trust with them. And is it excellent? I mean, they guarantee what they do and they'll back up you if you ever get audited. And I was like, okay, I'm going to step this out a little bit further. I'm going to give this 3 more months and just see where we land. And I advocated for myself. I worked with one of their bookkeepers so that to ensure that my bookkeeping was done in alignment with how their systems worked. I got to learn more. And then I ended up getting a massive, massive return because it turns out they'd been going through the last 5 years of my taxes, not just this tax year,
Mm.
because we'd created some new business structures. And it was like, okay, great. Had I reacted in the moment of frustration and doubt, I would have started down one path. But I used my values; they kept me in check, and then I ended up getting a really fun reward. So all was good, and it for when you don't know the how and the when, you're looking for evidence, you're looking for proof. But when you're creating something totally new, all you can do is look at the success you've got behind you and then trust you're going to step it out. And values are just, I think, a fantastic parameter within which to go, yes, this feels right. Or you know what, like this isn't in alignment and it doesn't tick off three or four of my values. So it's a no for right now. And we'll
Hmm.
see. Maybe things will change.
Right. How did you arrive at those values? Like, was there a exercise that you did that helped you understand what your values are?
I love that question. So there are, I think, like every leadership psychology MBA program has an exercise akin to a values assessment.
Hmm.
Brene Brown and her Dare to Lead. I've not actually read that book, but she has a PDF online that I will direct people to that has a whole list of values. So it's a very, very common exercise. It's interesting. I find that a lot of people think about it from their personal lives or they don't. I believe that your values evolve. I mean, the easiest example, as soon as you have children or potentially get married, or
Hmm.
go through like a near-death experience, like everything in your life kind of changes.
Right.
And so I believe that values evolve. If you've read Ray Dalio's Principles, he would argue that there are overarching things that you're born with and never change. I'm sure, maybe for some people. So when I start to feel a little bit panicky and weird, I call them my mid-year crises because
Hmm.
like every 6 months I'm like, oh my God, what the hell am I doing? I'll just go back through a values assessment. And it's basically just going, okay, what's the most important thing? If it's useful, there's a ton of lists online that you can just like go like
Sure.
list of values or values assessment, and you'll circle 15 to 20. And then you'll start to look at it like, how did I arrive at authentic? Well, truth, commitment, loyalty, work ethic, a lot of these things that are really important to me roll up into that term. And what I realized, the reason authentic is the word that resonated is this idea that what I know to be true in this moment is, and empowering myself to be able to change my mind and voice that new reality whenever I need to. That's really what authentic embodies for me. And it might mean something different to somebody else. The challenge is if we have 15 to 20 values, like that's just a lot of boxes to be continually
Yes.
like thinking about. So I am refining it. Those four have really carried me probably for the last 4 or 5 years. Adventure was one, an excellent, those were kind of words that I've played around with, but adventure for me rolls up spontaneity, challenge,
Yeah.
learning, development, growth. So again, there's a lot that can kind of be included in some of these terms and have fun with it, play with it. And I find it really useful in business specifically because your values are how your long-term loyal customers, buyers, clients are going to connect with you and why they're going to keep coming back.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. Why? Because there are plenty of people who can offer what you offer potentially. Why would they
Absolutely.
choose you? And it always comes back to because of you. They connect with you and they're connecting with you on that level.
Hmm.
I mean, hopefully on several levels, but it starts with the values. I like what you said about reevaluating the values because they evolve, they
They
change.
do.
And this is one of the things, yeah, when I'm working with my clients in the Fuck Being Fine experience is we start with values and getting clarity on what it is that you really truly want.
Yeah.
And one of the foundational things to figuring that out is to understand what you value.
Yep. Well, and oftentimes I find that when we're experiencing friction and struggle in our day, there's a misalignment with our values. So we feel
Mm-hmm.
like we're having to sacrifice one of these things that's incredibly important to us. And what I find really interesting about the challenge of business and professional values is in our personal lives, we can just be like, nope, get out of my way. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
what's most important to me. Like take it or leave it. But in business, we're often working with people that we need to address the fact that we're having some friction here and negotiate it. And so if family is super important to you and excellence is really important to me, and we've got a client who's just called at 5 p.m. on a Friday, I might get really upset about the fact that you want to go home, and you might get really upset about the fact that my
Mm-hmm.
expectation is that you would stay. And there's an interesting opportunity there for both of us to honor what's important and then figure out how we're going to move forward with this without anyone ever having to sacrifice or then build resentment or, all of the other things that kind of come along when we feel like we're martyring ourselves.
Yes, to look at it as a growth opportunity. That's,
Hmm.
yeah, I was just having this conversation this afternoon with a friend about working with difficult clients. And my stance was, well, when you're an entrepreneur and you're running your own business, you can tell them to go away
Yeah.
and not have to work with them. And her vision of it is, well, I see it as an opportunity to grow and that they're challenging me in some way that gives me an opportunity to grow. So two different, I guess it depends how much they're pushing you, whether it's worth
Well,
the
and
growth
two, I mean, it really
opportunity or you
depends
just don't
on,
want to.
a challenging client can mean a lot of different things.
Yeah.
It can mean someone who's like very much in a doubt space, and they don't know if they can do it, and so that is an opportunity for growth. But if you have
Sure.
someone who's just making a ton of excuses and
Right.
not taking accountability and then blaming you for it, that's then
Right.
like very different values there are being honored. So.
Yeah. And that's what our conversation was around.
Hmm.
So it's interesting that you're bringing it up now. Yeah.
Isn't it funny how that always happens?
Yeah. Clearly, the universe is sending us a message
Hmm.
around that particular topic. Not just me, because here we are sharing it with everybody now. So
Exactly.
everyone benefits.
Well, and this is normal. Like uh it is normal to feel frazzled and challenged and intimidated by what's happening. And that's where again I find like the values are an anchor. And in all of the uncertainty that we're experiencing, you can go back to them and go, okay, well, am I ticking these off? Am I safe? Am I secure? Great. And if not, it's like, well, are these still important to me? Yeah, they are. Okay, well, then something in my experience needs to shift. It's not me. I'm not doing anything wrong here. But
Mm-hmm.
like if my boss is continually asking me to stay, or, my client is continually asking me to work late and family is my number one, then this isn't going to work. That needs to shift. And I can address that simply by saying, look, these are my values and these are kind of a non-negotiable right now. So how can we either shift what's happening externally or just agree that this isn't a good fit any longer?
Right. Yes. That's so good. All right. That is a fantastic place to leave this conversation. However,
Well,
before
thank
we
you.
go, I need to ask you, what is the song that you listen to when you need an extra boost of energy? You seem pretty energetic as a person overall anyway, but when you need extra energy, you need that boost of enthusiasm, what's the song that you can't sit still to?
Well, so like as someone who worked in music, picking one song
I
is
know.
always a challenge. But the song that's really stuck with me is Gloria Gaynor's I Will Survive.
Oh,
Firstly, like 70s disco, anytime I need to like a quick pick me up, that is a go-to.
sure.
That song, for a lot of different reasons, has been a part of my experience for since my childhood, and it's kind of an inside joke with some of my like inner people as well. So it's a pretty special tune. But yeah, for a lot of different reasons, like that one just gets me going.
That is such a good one. And you said the Gloria Gaynor version because the other
Yeah,
it's been redone a few
it
times,
has.
but that's
It has.
that's the
Because
original.
it's
Yeah.
so good.
It is so good.
Yeah.
Nicole, where can people get in touch with you if they want to continue this conversation?
Well, my favorite form of communication is text. And so people can text me 720-704-4865. I love solving business conundrums. So hit me up with a problem you're experiencing in your business. I'm on all the socials. My handle's the BZ channel. And my website is NicoleBZ.com.
Okay. I will put
Yeah,
links to all of that
great. Thank you
in the
so
show
much.
notes. Thank you so much for joining me today on Fine
Oh,
is a four-letter
absolute
word.
pleasure. And thank you for creating this resource for your listeners. And thank you, listeners, for listening. This is just so powerful. And I just appreciate everything you're doing for the community.
Thank you.